And away we go. Welcome in, everybody. It is time for Three Guys Before the Game, episode number 378. Our summer series continues with a very special guest. Mike Patrick joins us on Three Guys. The Dean is here, Hoppy Kercheval. The Senator is here as well, Brett Howe. Three Guys Before the Game brought to us by Comax Business Systems, your full-service Konica Minolta dealer. Go to Comax Business Systems at comaxwv.com, and by the Burdett Camping Center, the only warranty forever RV dealer in all of West Virginia. You can visit them at burdettcamping.com. Self-disclosure. We spoke with Mike for about 30 seconds before we started to roll tape.
Yep.
It was just good to hear the voice again.
It
was just good.
Yep.
And it still sounds clean, and it still sounds big, and it still sounds good. How are you, Mike?
Well, it's just a good thing you can't see me. The voice has lasted. Everything else is going bad.
Oh, boy. But overall, how old are you?
77.
Are you 77? Outstanding.
Yeah. Time flies, boy.
Yeah, it does. But you know what? Getting back to your voice, you're 77, dude, and your voice still sounds like that, which I wouldn't think that it would. As I look ahead towards 77, hopefully, I don't think I'll sound like this when I'm 70. You sound great.
I bet you will. I learned a long time ago listening to singers. My mother was a singer in the big band era, and her voice never changed. She could sing at 75 exactly the way she did when she was 25.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a lot of singers are like that. Their voices won't change, and I guess it works the same thing for sportscasters.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. You mentioned your mom, and obviously you were a Clarksburg guy. How did your family come to West Virginia? Had they always been here, or was there a move at some point into the state?
Half of my family had lived in Doddridge County, and the other half had emigrated from Ireland on my father's side of the family. So it was a mixture of Irish and English when I was born.
Yeah, the classic West Virginia demographic, right, Hoppy? Scots-Irish?
Yeah, Scots-Irish.
A lot of
Did you ever
Scots-Irish.
Mike, did you ever get back to Ireland?
I got to do a football game over there.
No kidding.
We really didn't have enough time. It was let's see, Georgia Tech was one of the teams. I don't think it was Notre Dame. Should have been.
Yeah.
But I can't recall exactly. We only had about a day and a half of free time, so we explored Dublin, and then we made one trip out as far as we could go before we had to get back that evening.
Sure.
And it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just as magnificent as anybody tells you it would be.
Yeah.
There's so many. We think in West Virginia, we know a lot about green. I mean, it's springtime in West Virginia. It's a beautiful green.
That's
Ireland is that deep green and multiple shades of green. You think, I know green. You go to Ireland and you see, of course, it rains every day, but that's why it's green.
Yeah.
Only the roads are smaller, which is hard to believe, coming from Clarksburg.
It makes Doddridge County look like they have big roads, right?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Exactly.
The difference is in Ireland, people actually will pull over and let you by, as opposed to in West Virginia where they run you off the road. That's a big difference.
They will. They're very pleasant.
Wonderful people.
I thought Kercheval was going to go.
The thing about the Irish is you can't insult us. Apparently, you can insult every other ethnic group on the face of the earth, but you cannot insult the Irish. Because when they tell us we're a bunch of drunks who like to fight, we go, "What's your point?"
Oh, that's good. Hey, let me ask you this retirement thing. Is it what you thought it was? Are you enjoying it? Do you still Jones to one day grab your Sharpie markers and start building a chart? Where are you at in this whole thing?
I didn't think I would enjoy it because my granddad raised me, my granddad and grandmother, and he was forced into retirement. Back in the day, you had to quit when you were 65. And he had no hobbies. He had no other life except his job. He just loved it. And he started dying the day he retired.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've got a lot of other things I like to do. If I was in his situation, I'd probably feel the same way. But I have loved every minute of it.
Great.
The only thing that would get me back is either doing West Virginia games or St. Louis Cardinals games. And I'd sit beside you for nothing.
Oh, boy. That's I tell you what, there's people that listen. There might be an ESPN Plus 2 game.
That'd be a good one.
There's a lot of games. They do all the games.
Keep your phone on.
Yeah, keep that on there.
Mike, what part of it, though, do you miss the most?
The people. I mean, it was I worked hard at it. I had to. I know there's a lot of people that are much brighter than I am and can memorize things faster than I could. But I would have to work 65, 70 hours a week because it was a lot of travel, and we'd go from I live outside of D.C., and they'd give us a UCLA game one week, and the travel just eats you alive. But we had the best people in the world, camera guys, tape operators, just all the crew. They were wonderful. We had brilliant directors and producers. I miss them so much. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and I miss the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't miss the preparation. I don't miss all the memorization. I was never a student in school because I didn't know what I was going to do. So the only hard work I ever did was when I was a sportscaster.
I've always wondered, I know pieces of your career. You were an anchor, a sports anchor in D.C., but then you transitioned. But then you transitioned to become a TV play-by-play announcer. And I'm very interested and intrigued to know that transition because those are two very different things, obviously. And
they are.
Yeah. So how did you do? And this is going to sound like a super silly question, but when you transitioned, who was the focal point that you looked at and said, I need to do it this way? What was the evolution of you as a play-by-play announcer?
Jack Fleming and Dick Enberg.
Wow.
Because they both made me feel like I was listening to or watching the most important thing in the world, and they wanted to share it with me. I always felt that if somebody tunes on your game, they're not doing it. My mother wouldn't even tune it on to watch me. She was going to watch the game.
Right.
So we all got paid too much money for just being there. But it was, I wanted to share the enjoyment that they shared with me. I wanted people to feel good about listening to that game and try to maybe tell them something they didn't already know or something that clicked with my memory in my later years, that I can remember back to 15 years ago when that happened and who it was and stuff like that. But I just wanted people to enjoy it as much as I did. And I added, when I was an anchor, I worked for the worst television station in the world, the ABC affiliate in Washington, D.C.
WJLA? JLA?
Yeah, we had a new news director every 6 months. And the first one would come in and say, I want you to do all the games you can because it really enhances your reputation. He'd get fired. And the next guy came in and said, I don't want you doing any games. I want you here. And then the next guy would come in and say, I want you to do all the games you can. And I said, this is ridiculous. So I just kept going more games and more games and more games on the side until I got to the point where I could make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working for the ACC. And I loved that. That was, before expansion, it was just the best basketball in the world.
Right. Yeah.
So I got lucky. I had to make a choice, and I made the right one.
You're a big WVU fan, but there you were doing Maryland games, and I guess you did some West Virginia, Maryland football games, right?
Yeah, probably. Probably.
Don't recall.
I mean,
You've done so many games. I mean,
Tony.
Did you, Mike? Did you ever do a generalized count of how many games you think you ended up doing?
No, I really never. I never kept track of anything like that. There were certain games that stood out. The one that stands out, the one that hurt the most, is the one that stands out the most. It's when I did the West Virginia Pitt game in Morgantown when all we had to do was beat them to get to the national championship game.
Yeah, that hurt a lot of people.
when they said, you're going to get to do that game, I was over the moon. I was so thrilled. I went out and bought new clothes. And, I was going to look good for that sucker. And then I just sat there when the game was over and everybody else had left. I walked into one of the booths next door and closed the door and just started screaming. Because I never wanted anybody to think that I was prejudiced toward West Virginia. In fact, I would usually go the other direction so nobody could ever accuse me of that.
Yeah.
My job was to be 50-50, and the only chance I ever had to be a homer was 3 years in Jacksonville when they had great basketball teams, and that was so much fun.
And that's wild because when he got assigned to that game, or Mike, when you got assigned to that game, that we took that as a sign, right? It's a sign. It's a sign.
Yeah.
Going to the national
That's
championship
right.
game. Mike Patrick's
That's
in the booth for this, calling it. Here we go to the national title.
Yeah. Oops, Pat White gets hurt.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it, man.
Good thing I didn't have a gun.
Jeez. Hey, when you talked about Mike doing the ACC, and that was really, I think, a premier time for the ACC. Some of the great coaches and great rivalries, and just that must have been. You alluded to the fact how much fun that was, particularly in basketball.
Every game,
Yeah.
7 of the 8 teams would be in the top 15. And every game meant something, and every game was a war. And then the ACC tournament was the biggest event there was outside of the NCAA Final Four. I mean, it was a battle to the death every game with great coaches and great players. One of the funniest things that ever happened, they sent me a list of 250 players, and they said, we need you to whittle this down to the top 50 you think that have played in the ACC.
Wow, that's tough.
So I started crossing off names, and I said, okay, I'm done. And there was 125 left instead of 50.
Yeah.
So now I'm cutting players of the year, guys who were second in the nation in scoring, and it was just ridiculous. It was like going back to when we had Hot Rod Hundley, Jerry West, and Rod Thorne for 9 years in a row.
Yep.
I thought you were supposed to be 24-2.
Yeah.
You were in Old Cole Fieldhouse, weren't you?
Oh yeah. A big old barn. I love that place. I love old stadiums. I never got to see the old field house in Morgantown. My uncle would tell me about it. So when the other team had the lead, people start stomping and the building moved. That would scare the living hell out of the visitors.
Mike, let's talk ESPN for a second, because you obviously did so many big moments there, from women's basketball national titles to the College World Series, voice of college football, NFL Sunday night. Give us a look back to the path. How did that begin for you? Who was it that brought you over into ESPN and started that incredible run of just absolutely big-time events? You were there.
It's actually a hilarious story. Somebody called me the second year ESPN existed and offered me, they had a new college football package, and he offered me $100 a game. And I said, excuse me, I don't think my phone's working. It's supposed to be a bad connection. He said, well, we want you to show up on Wednesday and go to all the practices and be prepared. And I said, how much did you say it was? He said, $100 a game. He said, you want me to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and go home on Sunday for $100 a game? He said, that's it. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, if you'll throw in about 40 basketball games, I'll think about it. And he said, my 10-year-old son can do basketball games. I said, well, good luck to your son, because I'm not doing them. So 2 years later, the boss got an audition tape. The guy that had done this to me, or that we had this conversation with, brought in a tape of he will remain nameless for this conversation. He was terrible. He was my analyst for 2 years on the ACC. He was a wonderful guy, but he was a terrible analyst. And he wanted to hire him as the analyst for ESPN, the number one analyst for college football. And my boss, after he hired me, told me, he says, that guy's awful. I want the play-by-play guy.
Wow.
So that was me, and that's how I got the job.
Right place.
I mean, talk about dumb luck.
Yeah, right place, right time. That's the business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mike,
and I remember you and I talking one day about your career path and, chances to do this and chances to do that. I know you think, I know you took the right path.
No question. Yeah. You don't know that. You don't know that as it's happening, but in retrospect, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, when you did,
Mike, think I said, listen to your heart. I mean, you obviously did.
Yeah.
Mike, on big games, how much thought did you put into not only the preparation for the X's and O's and the names, but that this is going to have significance beyond just this game, and therefore there may be a moment, and I'm going to have to talk about the significance of the moment. Did you have to think about that in advance, or did it just sort of evolve granularly while you were doing the game? In other words, capturing the moment.
Yeah, I had to let it happen by itself. When I got the NFL gig, people called me on the phone and said, "Well, obviously you're going to work harder now than you're doing the NFL." I said, "No, I'm going to work just as hard as I did when I was doing high school football and 500 people were listening to it." Because I've never just thought, "Well, this is an unimportant game." None of them were ever unimportant, even the bad ones. They were important to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody listened or somebody watched, and they were going to get the best I could possibly give them. And that may be the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Well, you should be.
Mike, this business has changed dramatically in the years, even in the years that you've been gone as a regular announcer. It has changed. You mentioned Fleming and you mentioned Enberg, two significantly different styles to what we are seeing today. And I'm not throwing this to bash. I'm just asking you, where do you stand on this new world of people applauding people who scream and yell?
I can't take it.
Yeah.
There are people, I'll want to watch a game and an announcer will come on and it just makes my stomach turn over because most of them, well, maybe not most of them, but a lot of them have agendas. And their agenda is not to bring you the best game. Their agenda is to do something that's going to get them a commercial, to have a catchphrase that's going to make them more popular. And that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to listen to some of them.
Yeah, totally get it.
Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are absolutely brilliant still, but some I think are just, I don't know where they dug some of these people up.
Yeah, I think if you put them through the Fleming and the Enberg test, in other words, if you let Jack and Dick listen to these guys, I think they would shake their head and go, "What is that?" And I think that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate test, right? That would be like, that's not right.
Absolutely.
That's not.
I mean, they made me feel like I was watching the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because it was to them.
Yeah. No.
They were doing it, and they'd worked hard to get ready for it, and it was just. Those two examples were honestly just the best people I ever heard.
You mentioned an analyst that you didn't care for. Who are some of your all-time, if you had to have a draft, the Mike Patrick analyst draft, give me your first 2-3 picks.
Oh, geez.
I know that's hard. Like, which one of your kids do you like the most? I get that, but you had to have some things where guys you just loved working with.
Yeah, well, Joe Theismann would be one.
Mm-hmm.
He and Paul McGuire when we worked on Sunday Night Football. In the ACC, I got to work with a lot of great people. Dan Bonner was one of them. I think he knows the game as well as anybody that's ever done it. He knows the rule book backward and forward. But my favorite of all time, I think the best analyst of any sport that ever lived was Billy Packer.
Yeah.
And I think that because he's the only person I ever knew that could follow the ball and had the peripheral vision to see everything else at the same time. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
I just don't know how he did it. And there was not a single game I ever did with him that he didn't say something that was so insightful that it just made me stop and look at him.
Yeah.
Something that had never occurred to me in my life. And he was just brilliant. I couldn't wait to work with him.
What are you doing now? Not at this moment, but I mean, what do you mentioned that you're enjoying retirement. How are you occupying your time now?
I am playing really bad golf.
Oh, excellent. Getting your money's worth. More shots for the money.
Well, the other day I got the round couldn't have cost me much if we went on a first-stroke basis. But they, unfortunately for me, they built a casino about 20 minutes from my house.
Uh-oh.
So I come out here Friday and Saturday and play poker and just have a great time. Fortunately, I'm pretty good at it because I was always pretty good with numbers.
Oh, that's great.
What's your favorite game?
I like poker and craps for totally different reasons. Poker, I think, is an intellectual game. Craps is just dumb luck.
Yeah.
And it tells me something that I do better at craps than I do at poker.
Do you have shock moments when you watch or just hang out nowadays and see the involvement of gambling? And I mean, I'm sure back in the day when you first took that NFL gig, you were told either verbally or non-verbally, like, don't even go down that road to mention a spread or this or that. And now the thing is just over the top. You
just knew. I mean, the NFL, we used to have the ESPY Awards in Las Vegas, and the NFL forced us to move it. They said, if you do it another year, you won't be able to show any highlights.
Wow.
And there goes ESPN.
That's changed.
About that, yeah.
And then fast forward, they're involved with every gambling outfit on the face of the earth.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
You know, when somebody explains to them that they can make a lot of money off of it, somehow the disdain for it disappears.
Yeah.
I don't mind people gambling on games. That's just fine. But to incorporate it in everything drives me crazy. And the people that used to say, and some still do, well, this game is important to some people, even though it's 27-4. You know, it just bothers me. It's different, and I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. So,
Mike, I mentioned earlier one of the big time events you did was the College World Series, which I've often contended probably doesn't get the exposure or the recognition that it should. It's an all-time great event. What are some memories you have of the College World Series there in Omaha?
Wish I could remember the kid's name. Well, first of all, the crew, as soon as it was announced the dates, there was a crew list, and they took them in order of signing up. There was a line of people to sign up to go to the College World Series. And these are cameramen that had to work both games of a doubleheader, and they had to be there 2 hours in advance to prep. And they worked themselves to death in Omaha, and they couldn't wait to get there. And neither could I. It was the most enjoyable thing until around 4:30 every afternoon when you could see the funnel clouds start to form. Yeah. That put me on edge a little bit, but it was the ultimate in watching people overachieve. There was a kid, I wish I could remember his name. I can't even remember the team. He had broken ribs, and they didn't think he was going to be able to play. Multiple broken ribs. And he was a left-handed batter and a right fielder. The first game we did that he played in, he ran into the wall twice making catches and then laid there on the ground and had to be helped up, but he would not come out of the game. And when he would swing and miss, you would see him go down to one knee because it hurt so bad. But he was such a good hitter, he didn't swing and miss very often. And it it was that kind of thing at the College World Series that just made it so special. People doing things that you didn't expect them to do, people overachieving, which I always love.
Yeah.
And of course, I can't wait to see our new quarterback in the fall and see that Pitt series renewed. That was maybe the worst day of my life when they dropped that series so they could both make more money. I was so disgusted with both schools, I couldn't see straight. But now at least, we're going to do it again. And I will sit in my basement and cheer if things go well and throw things if they don't.
We need to get you over here for a game. We need to get you over here and we'll give you the VIP treatment and get you to sit down and just sit back and enjoy one, man.
Well, you may have a deal there, but I'm too loud at games when I'm a fan.
Yeah, I get you.
I say things that shouldn't be said, so
Yeah,
I've sort of banned myself from live events. So, otherwise, I'd have to wear a full face mask.
Well, that's, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if you know this or not, Mike, but on some of these radio feeds nowadays, they have a camera in the booth, and they send a video stream out on Facebook where people can watch the radio announcers.
Cool.
Well, no, wait. Now think about this, though. Think about this. They can watch the radio announcers broadcast the game. So it's just a camera focused on the color guy and the play-by-play guy.
Right.
But as you well know, especially if you're the home broadcaster, when something goes awry, like you miss so like that is you bang your hand or you lift the table or you shake your head, and that could be problematic as well. So I hear what you're saying about that. You just got to be careful.
Well, you're allowed to be a homer.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead and do anything you want.
we learned that from Jack, right?
Yeah, it's more fun than anything.
Oh, man. Well, listen, my friend, it's great hearing your voice. We really do appreciate your time, and we congratulate you on a unbelievable career and getting ready to do this in the last couple of days. I just thought to myself, the role that you played, the significance, and Brad read off as just a few of the many different things that you dabbled in and you broadcast. When you ended your career as a voice, you became one of those Enberg voices that people will always have. And if just to do that, that's like the ultimate right there. And so that's fantastic.
Well, it was so enjoyable for me, and I appreciate you guys so much. It's wonderful to talk to you. I wish you all the best.
All right, buddy. Be good. Thanks so much.
Bye, Mike.
All right.
There he is.
Bye.
Bye-bye. There he is. Mike Patrick.
That was fun. Because, what you said there at the end is right. If you're a certain age, he's one of those soundtrack guys.
Signature voice.
When he came on, it was a big event. We talked about women's basketball, the College World Series, Sunday Night Football, or primetime college football. You heard Mike Patrick's voice. This is a big event. He was that guy for a long, long time.
And he did a lot of games, okay? I mean, he did NFL, he did college football, college basketball, he did the College World Series. I think he did women's. I mean, he did. So for 30 years, for sports fans, you turn on a game like, oh, Mike Patrick's there. I mean, it's funny that not funny, but he's such a normal guy. Like, no, I don't know how many games I did. I mean, thousands of games to the point where he doesn't remember them all. But at the same time, he was, I don't want to say low profile, but he was not, he wasn't flashy. He wasn't controversial. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't
comfortable.
He
was comfortable and good.
Yeah. You were comfortable as a viewer.
Very. Yes. That's a good way to say that.
Watching him, he made you comfortable. So like when the things started to come out, you go, okay, I'm good here.
Yeah,
this is good. I can listen to him.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought when you asked him about doing the games, and he talked about I wanted to be a big event, and I wanted that to come through. That was a great explanation because that's the way it felt watching him.
Yes.
It didn't matter what game it was. You could tell he was excited, or at least was projecting to be excited, which then brought me in. Okay, he's into it, right? He came.
100%.
I thought he came across that way every single time I listened to him.
100%, and that helps me as well because if it is a game that perhaps isn't beating down on the national radar, you know what it is? It's a massive game for whomever is playing because you only get one chance, right? And so let's just say for example, WVU's playing a non-conference basketball game and it's early in the season. You know what? For those kids on that other team, that's their life moment. They talk about that game. And I've seen guys come back 30 and 40 years later and said, I was on this team that played West Virginia, or I played. That was their moment. And for them, it is a big deal, and that's the way you should handle it.
We'll do another example, because all three of us have done high school games, right? And right. I think that's the example. When you've done big-time events, some say, well, it's high school. Is it? No, man, you talk about a big moment for those high school kids.
Huge.
That's it. I think that's a good piece of advice, good lesson right there from Mike Patrick. Whatever it is you're doing, it's got to be a big deal. You got to be into it.
That stood out to me too. I thought that was a wonderful approach to the professionalism that he brought to the table, and not just to those participating, but if somebody's listening, then they care about what happens, or they wouldn't be listening or watching. Mm-hmm. So you have to think in those terms. So, wonderful, and he's had that just wonderful career. And
you're going to sound. Is your voice going to sound as good as his at 77?
Doesn't sound as good now. I mean,
no,
I
disagree.
It's already fading.
You still got it. I mean, you think your voice will sound like that in 10 years?
Get off my yard.
I don't think so. I don't know if it will.
Someday, I don't know. I never considered, he has, I think, one of those voices. It is smooth. Like you said, it's smooth. It's comfortable. It's not too high. It's not too low. It is very melodic. It is. He has a beautiful voice, and he said his mother was a singer.
Yes.
Mine's more of a struggle. I gotta get it out. It's not going. So it's different.
He has a melodic voice.
Yeah, it's a very melodic
voice.
So
recognizable. And again, I know that's because of all the big games we watched him do. But if you would have just said, "Come into the studio today, turn it on, and go," I'm not telling you who we're talking to. Would have taken about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It still sounds exactly like he sounded when he was on.
So think about this. So he ends one of the all-time great announcers. And the thing that hit me there was when I said, okay, who'd you emulate? Fleming, Jack Fleming, Dick Enberg. Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember when Jack was doing the games and Mike was doing a Mountaineer game that he would come over to the booth and he'd be like, man,
Jack Fleming.
It's Jack Fleming, and that used to happen a lot. I mean, I remember Keith Jackson.
Yeah.
Keith Jackson used to come into the booth and he would search out Jack to see Jack. And those are great moments. And Enberg, I only had the chance to meet him once, and he was as good as you would ever imagine he would be. He was everything you would imagine. We interviewed him for the Hot Rod Hundley documentary, and we caught him in Pittsburgh when he was doing the Padres.
Yeah, because he was still active into what, 80s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was I think it was his last season. And we scheduled this thing, and we go into the hotel in Pittsburgh where the Padres were staying, and he was going to come downstairs, do the interview, and then head over. It was a Thursday because it was a getaway day, so it was a relatively early day for those guys. And he walks in, and it was like, whoa, there's Dick Enberg. And he said, okay, guys, we'd give him a little background. We want to talk about Hot Rod because he worked with Hot Rod. And he said, okay. And obviously he had done countless interviews for documentaries and things like that. He goes, I don't know, exactly how much, if I can give you what you guys are looking for. And I said, well, let's just roll it. We rolled. And I mean, everything he said could have been a soundbite. Like he couldn't have held a paper in front of himself and read quotes and bites the way that he gave the answers. Like we're just sitting there going, and I'm going like, I'm interviewing, and I'm going like, I'm living a dream here. The dude is the dude, man.
And you wonder, because as a broadcasters, you have heroes, and you worry about meeting your heroes, right? Because what if they turn out to be jerks or something?
Yeah.
But that's a great story. Mine, not as big as Enberg, but growing up, I was a big fan of Ray Scott, who was on CBS for years. This is before your time, Brad. Ray Scott, and he did the Green Bay Packers on CBS, did CBS television, NFL, and was a morning news anchor like in Wisconsin or somewhere. And he did Penn State. And Penn State came to Old Mountaineer Field, and I interviewed him before the game as part of our pregame on the Mountaineer Countdown 100 years ago. And I asked him, and I remember the interview, and asked him, I said, you did the Green Bay Packers and those glories. What was like? Hoppy, it was fantastic. I just remember his voice just like, that's Ray Scott, and he really sounds like Ray Scott, and he's really good at what he's doing.
I had the same thing with Musburger.
Oh, did you?
First time I ever encountered Musburger was 87, and it was at the Sun Bowl. West Virginia's getting ready to play Oklahoma State, and he at that time was also contributing on CBS radio, and he would do like a daily report. So we're sitting around waiting to get an interview with Coach Nealon and Musburger. He comes in because CBS is going to come and get their pregame stuff, and he was going to grab some sound. Hoppy, he brought down. He was.
They have a Marantz,
the big one. You remember the big one that took 8? Are those Ds? Those batteries? Ds?
Yeah.
It took, seriously, and that's not an exaggeration. It took 8 D batteries. It weighed.
Are those Ds?
It weighed like 30 pounds. We used to just call it the Big Marantz, and it had great audio.
Yeah.
It was a cassette player.
So when he came down, did he say something when he walked in the room and you went, was it a question? What's
Well, he came in and I kind of went like, oh, shoot, there he is, man. You are looking live.
Hello, Tony.
El Paso, Texas.
hello, everyone.
And so he said at that time, I'm trying to think, he came in and told the WVU people, he said, now, I'm going to ask him about the Ohio State job because that was happening. I mean, at that point, Coach Nealon was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he thought it. He told us when he was on the podcast.
Yes.
He told us he thought, it was his gig. And all those guys, all the staff thought, we're gone. We're going to Ohio State. Now, I got to ask him about the Ohio State job.
Is he going to be a Buckeye?
Buckeye. And then a few years after that, it was only 2 or 3 years after that, I was doing a national radio game for what was called the PIA Radio Network. And I did Iowa hosting Ohio State. And the connection to get back home was we were going Iowa City to St. Louis to Pittsburgh. So we make it back to the airport. This is back, you could fly on Saturdays and get home. And it's like that October-ish where it's starting to get dark early. So I'm waiting, and it was a relatively small regional jet thing. It wasn't a big, massive plane. But anyway, so I'm waiting, and then here comes the CBS crew to the gate. And I go, oh, they're the same guys are there. They were just at the game. Oh, Musburger's going. So Musburger gets on the plane. And so we go up, and we're flying. And there's this drunk Iowa or Ohio State fan, one of the two, who was at the game. But he was hammered. And he had been at the game. Now he's flying home. So we're up in the air, and he started.
Plane's dark.
Plane's dark, and not only is it dark, it starts bumping pretty good, and we're getting turbulence. And Musburger is like one back from me on the other side of the aisle, and this dude is in front of Musburger, so I'm next to that guy.
Oh, geez.
And it starts getting bouncy, and this dude, and it's dark, and you just hear this guy go, Whoa, Brent! Hey, Brent! What's going on, Brent? Brent, what are we doing? And I mean, cracking through that, you hear Musburger's voice, and he says, Johnny, don't forget about Buddy Holly. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but Musburger is an ultimate ball buster. I mean,
he is?
Oh, he loves to bust. And so, Johnny, don't forget about Buddy Holly. Thanks, Brad. So
now, he still got his gig in Las Vegas?
He's the voice of the Los Raiders.
Really?
Radio voice.
Gosh, what is he, 80?
Yeah. And started VSiN, Vegas Sports Information.
80-something.
Yeah.
We interviewed him for Hot Rod.
Now, hold on.
Well.
Why he said the Buddy Holly line because you were in Buddy Holly's playing Crash in Iowa, right? That's why he was saying that. Chill out here, man. It's bumpy. Shut up. I don't want to be talking to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his guys Like his handlers, like they were uncomfortable that the guy was talking to Brent, and they're going like, dude, like cool, chill. Hey, Johnny, don't forget about Buddy Holly. But then we interviewed Brent here in Morgantown for the Hot Rod piece as well. Same type of a deal when we sat down with him. We had taken over a room in the Residence Inn and just made it into a studio. And he walked in, and he was just like drilling pearls of wisdom. Like, and I looked at myself and said, Musburger, Enberg. That's why they're Musburger and Enberg. That's why, because they're at a different level.
Didn't you have a story about Musburger doing it was a baseball game, and you were there?
Oh, yeah, no, that was Dave Ryan. So Dave Ryan, who
tell that. That's a good story.
So Dave Ryan, who used to work for us, and then he was at ESPN for a number of years. He's on CBS Sports Network. And he got assigned to the Little League World Series in Williamsport for years and years. Well, if you remember, after a period of time, Musburger would do that. He would do the Little League World Series every year. There he is, folks, Daniel Monte. Look at that young lad, right? So he would get it. So Ryan, Dave was doing a game, like the 4:30 game or something, and it was by the time it wound up, it was gonna go into the next one, and the next one was gonna be like the big game of the night, the 7 o'clock game or the 8 o'clock game. So the game's getting the Ryan's game's done. There's this little period of time, and they're waiting. They're back in the studio. No Musburger. I mean, zero, not a sight, like nowhere. And so they go like, hey, Dave, stay there in the booth. Got a little situation. Brent's not here. So you're might have to do this one here. Might have to do this one. So like they get Rhino in the stool, and whoever's doing the game with them, and okay, floor manager comes in, sets them up, turns it, okay, we're all good. Okay, we're all good at this. Okay, stand by. And it's like less than 3 minutes. And they hear up the steps. Here he comes. Door opens up, and it's Musburger. He goes, hello, everybody. He goes, sorry, I made you nervous there. Rhino gets up. And now by now they go like 60. And he sits down there. He gets tuned up a little bit. And then, boom, open animation comes out. Folks, you are looking live at Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Folks, it's the Little League World Series. And how about this team from Covine, California? And he crushed it. He just crushed it. And we're going to come back with the opening pitch right after this. That's what it is, man. Think about that. That's a walk in the park for him, considering what he used to do when he had the scoreboard show on the NFL with Jimmy the Greek and Phyllis George.
Irv
Cross, right? Irv Cross. I mean, that was those back then. Highlights, turn, go to this game, got this game, coming this. So what is it?
Which is where the You Are Looking Live came from.
Yes, and that was a gambling thing too.
Mm-hmm.
You know that?
Yeah. No, well,
it was a tip to his buddies in Vegas.
It was?
To know you're looking at weather conditions or whatever.
Oh.
So he would always say, You Are Looking Live. So anybody watching says, all right, what's the weather
It's
doing?
snowing.
What's the
It's
wind?
snowing
It's
in
snowing.
Philadelphia.
I got to make an adjustment here.
That's what it was for.
Did not know that.
Yeah, that's what it was all about. So he would tip off his guys, hey, guys, it's raining or it's windy or it's icing in Philadelphia. That's a live shot you're looking at. Folks, you are looking live. And then, of course, he'll always be tied in with West Virginia in that 88 game when he came in here and did the West Virginia-Penn State game, and they had an awesome scene setter. Where folks
come across the Star City Bridge. If you're lucky enough to have a ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. That's good. Three Guys Before the Game is brought to us by Burdette Camping Center. They happen to be the only warranty forever RV dealer in all of West Virginia. You can visit them at burdettecamping.com. burdettecamping.com. Buy it, and as long as you own it, the warranty is forever. Warranty forever, RV dealer in all of West Virginia.
Hold on real quick note. Thanks to the Three Guys listeners.
Yeah,
one in Greenville, South Carolina this week. Greenville, South Carolina.
Not North Carolina.
South, in this particular case.
Okay.
That's where Clemson is.
Clemson's in Clemson.
No, it's in, Greenville, South Carolina, right that area there.
And then Radford, Virginia. 2 Three Guys listeners have...
Darris Nichols?
No, one Darris.
Okay.
but same general area there.
Yeah.
There's other people there other than Darius.
Yeah.
And they're purchasing RVs from Phil. So thank you to
Are
the two
they?
listeners that have gone in, have mentioned Three Guys, and have got a great deal from Phil at Burdette Camping.
Now, they haven't gotten any calls about buying one in Texas, have they?
Well, no, they haven't sold one to Texas yet, but there's been an inquiry. Hoppy, there's been an
Is that
inquiry.
right?
There's been a lead coming in from Texas. Ownership in the Warbird starting to pay dividends there.
Wow, I tell you,
We'll get one sold out of
that
Texas here
Warbirds
soon.
thing is working out.
Well, sure it is.
So thanks to the listeners for supporting
What
Burdette
is
Camping.
our interest in the Warbirds? Do we have a percent?
Senator, where is that? You always keep saying we're efforting.
Yeah,
You
we'll talk later about that.
I feel like something's going like you're going to come back and actually we will have ownership. Like, what are you guys doing? It's draft day. Get busy. We got to get some guys in here for the Warbirds.
Three Guys is also brought to us by Comax Business Systems, your full-service Konica Minolta dealer. Go to Comax Business Systems at comaxwv.com. They will come in and do a free inventory and audit of your networking in your business and tell you if you're good to go or if you got a problem. Visit them at comaxwv.com. Trust me when I tell you, wonderful people to work with. So check it out. You know, I mentioned that Greenville, South Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina, and we'll end on this. So, Brad, years ago, West Virginia was playing East Carolina in Greenville, North Carolina. And the game was at night. And Jerry Dulac, longtime Pittsburgh Steelers beat writer, was then covering WV football. And he came flying into the booth, into the press box, about maybe 10 minutes into the first quarter of the Mountaineer game against East Carolina. Now, you know that news sports writers, I mean, they're there hours before a game.
Whenever the food's served.
Yeah, and he came all flustered. What happened, Jerry? Well, I told our travel person at the Post-Gazette I was going to Greenville. She booked me to Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of my hotel this morning and I said, Mountaineers leave yet? And she said, no, the Clemson game's at noon.
Oh.
And he went, where am I? He jumped in his car, one speeding ticket, got to Greenville, North Carolina, and was there for the game.
One of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. And I can't find it. Let's crowdsource this. I'd love to be able to find it. Jim Valvano.
Right.
I believe it was the year after they won the national championship, so it would have been in like 84, right in that time frame, the 84, 85 after they won it in 83. He was speaking to a group of sales professionals, one of those gold clubs for some industry. The single greatest speech I've ever heard. I mean, when he gave his ESPY speech and he said you need to laugh, you need to cry every day, this speech does it. I can vividly remember I was working at the University of Maryland. It was on a cassette tape, Hoppy. He had it on a cassette tape. And I was listening to it, and I was laughing so hard at one point I had to pull over. On the Beltway, I had to pull over because I couldn't breathe.
Should not pull over on the Beltway.
It was awesome. And one of the funniest parts of the story, he talks about when he got the NC State job, but he didn't know what he was know anything, flying down there from Iona, and he had all NC State stuff, and he went to the wrong airport, did the same thing. Went to the wrong airport, and he talks about that. And it was just a wonderful, funny speech about the same thing. Didn't went to the wrong place.
Northeastern guy, didn't know anything outside the Northeast.
Didn't know. Rutgers.
Yeah.
He worked at Rutgers.
It's always
He has a great speech about Rutgers.
Green Bay Packers.
The Green Bay
That's what he
Packers
did. You've
was
heard that? You've
fantastic.
heard that part when he does that?
Yeah, I've heard that. Oh, boy.
Coach of the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, I'll tell you what, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Three Guys Before the Game. Hoppy, I think you had a good time.
A great time.
Good time.
Oh, we were taping? I thought we were just talking. I didn't know we were actually
Same
taping.
difference. That's what some people say when they listen. They say, it sounds like you guys just get in there and you just talk. I said, you'd be shocked.
It's as though that that we had not prepared. It's as though it's that casual.
How about wasn't it interesting that Mike Patch said the one thing he doesn't miss is preparation? Because you could tell he just absolutely bulldozed it, and that was hard. It was harder to prepare back then because you didn't have access to the information. Plus, you had to write stuff. Instead, now you can copy, right? You can put stuff in software, and you can generate stuff. But back then, like he laughed when I said Sharpies because that's all it was. Everyone had a big rubber band full of Sharpies.
I was doing a game at the WVU Coliseum, a women's game. And the women's sports information director asked me, said, okay, is there anything else you need? I said, yeah, I need a flare. And I said, and she said, well, we can't bring a flare in here.
You went old school marker.
I went old school marker, flare.
A flare. Kershawal gave it a flare. Let's flare out of here.
Told my wife, she said, They haven't been flares for 20 years. Catch up. How about a magic marker?
Hey, do you have a crayon? Three Guys Before the Game.
Got an ink well over there?
Episode number 307. Can I borrow your quill? Episode 378. Mike Patrick visits for the dean, for the senator, our producer, Mark Spruill. We're out. Thanks for being with us on Three Guys Before the Game.